Every interaction we have, every conversation carries an invisible force, a force that can lift someone to the skies or bring them crashing down. This force is the ego. But what if I told you that understanding this force isn't just about knowing yourself? It's about knowing others. That with the right words, the right gestures, you could influence, persuade, even control without them ever realizing it? Have you ever wondered why some people always seem to get what they want? Why some leaders inspire loyalty while others fail? And what if the key lies not in logic, but in a subtle manipulation of the human ego? In this video, we're diving deep into the psychology of ego manipulation. We'll uncover the hidden strategies people use to sway opinions, gain trust, and bend minds, ethically, skillfully, and sometimes dangerously. By the end, you'll see every interaction around you in a completely new light. Welcome to the hidden power of the human ego. Ego, a simple word, but a force more powerful than most of us realize. It is the invisible thread that binds our thoughts, our desires, our fears. Ego is not just pride, not just self-esteem. It is the very essence of how we define ourselves. It shapes the way we think, the way we speak, and the way we see the world around us. At its core, ego is the lens of identity. It whispers to us, telling us who we are, what we deserve, and how we measure up against others. It is the quiet voice that can embolden a hero, or drive a person to ruin. In every interaction, ego is present, a hidden driver influencing choices, shaping reactions, and molding perceptions. Understanding ego is like peering into a darkened room and realizing that every shadow, every movement, every flicker of light is a reflection of someone's self-perception. To manipulate, persuade, or influence, one must first learn to recognize this force. Subtle, elusive, yet unrelentingly powerful. In this chapter, we will unravel the layers of ego. We will explore how self-esteem, pride, and personal identity intertwine, creating a psychological landscape that governs human behavior. A landscape that, once understood, can be navigated with skill and precision. Ego is not a quiet passenger in the mind. It is a driver, unseen, yet steering every decision, every reaction, every emotion. When someone feels attacked, criticized, or even overlooked, it is not logic that speaks first. It is ego, and ego reacts with instinctive force. Think about it. Why do some people lash out at a simple comment, while others shrug it off? Why does a minor setback feel like a catastrophic failure? The answer lies deep within the architecture of the ego. It acts like a guardian of self-worth, a sentinel that triggers emotional responses to protect identity. Pride flares, defensiveness surfaces, judgment becomes swift, often irrational. Ego-driven behavior is everywhere, in boardrooms, in social gatherings, in everyday arguments. It whispers, defend yourself, prove your worth, do not falter. And when this whisper turns into action, it can create conflicts, misunderstandings, and even manipulation opportunities. Because once you understand the patterns of ego, you can anticipate the reactions it fuels, before they even happen. In essence, ego is both shield and weapon. It defends, it asserts, it retaliates. And for those who know how to read it, it becomes a roadmap. A map that reveals why people do what they do and how subtle influence can sway their responses. Ego is invisible until it reveals itself. And it always does, through subtle signs, fleeting expressions, and the way people carry themselves. To truly understand and influence others, you must learn to read these signals, like a detective piecing together clues at a crime scene. Notice the slightest twitch of irritation when a suggestion is made. Watch for the protective walls people put up around their opinions. Observe how quickly a conversation turns defensive, or how praise can inflate someone's confidence to near arrogance. These are the footprints of ego, delicate, fleeting, but unmistakable to the trained eye. Ego manifests not just in words, but in posture, tone, and hesitation. A tightened jaw, a sharp tone, or even a pause before speaking can reveal insecurity masked as pride. And once these patterns are identified, you gain a rare power, the ability to predict reactions, to understand motivations, and to guide interactions in ways others cannot see. Recognizing ego is the first step to navigating the invisible battlefield of human behavior. It is the secret language that governs decisions, fuels conflicts, and creates opportunities for influence, if you know how to listen. Ego is not content to lurk in the shadows. It wields influence over the very choices we make. Pride, the core of ego, can twist reasoning, turning logic into justification and instinct into compulsion. Decisions that seem rational on the surface are often subtly guided by one question: how does this reflect on me? Consider a leader making a high-stakes choice. The best data might suggest caution, yet pride whispers, show strength, act decisively. Ego fuels ambition, shields self-image, and often blinds us to risk. It is the invisible hand pushing people toward decisions that serve identity rather than objective reality. And in that vulnerability lies opportunity for those who understand it. Ego is not just an emotional force, it warps perception. Our minds are wired to defend it, often without conscious thought. This is where cognitive biases emerge, mental shortcuts that protect self-esteem but distort reality. Confirmation bias, for instance, leads us to seek information that reinforces what we already believe, dismissing anything that threatens our self-image. Overconfidence inflates our perceived abilities, prompting risky decisions and reckless judgments. And the self-serving bias ensures we claim credit for successes, but blame failures on external forces, safeguarding the fragile fortress of identity. These biases are the fingerprints of ego in action. They dictate what we notice, what we ignore, and how we interpret every interaction. To manipulate influence, one must recognize these invisible traps, using them as a map to navigate the terrain of human thought. No ego exists in isolation. It thrives in relation to others. Social comparison, the act of measuring ourselves against the achievements, possessions, or status of those around us, is the fuel that drives insecurity, envy, and sometimes ruthless ambition. Every glance at a colleague's success, every whispered remark about a rival, every social media post. These are arenas where ego flexes its muscle. People instinctively compare, judge, and calibrate their worth relative to others. And in these comparisons, the psyche becomes vulnerable, susceptible to influence, manipulation, and persuasion. Understanding this dynamic is crucial. It reveals why some individuals react defensively to praise for others, why competition ignites impulsive choices, and why admiration can be a gateway to control. Ego, after all, does not exist in a vacuum. It thrives in the reflection of those around us. Ego does not hide forever. It reveals itself in subtle and sometimes unmistakable ways. The first sign of an inflated ego is arrogance, the kind that drips from every word and action. Arrogance is more than confidence. It is a shield, a signal that the person's sense of self-worth demands constant validation. Every conversation becomes a stage, every decision a declaration. I am superior, I am right. Next comes defensiveness, a reflexive reaction when the ego feels threatened. A seemingly innocent comment, a differing opinion, or even a hint of criticism can trigger sudden tension, sharp replies, or closed-off body language. Defensiveness is the ego's armor, protecting its fragile identity from perceived attacks. And it can be detected, if you watch carefully, in the tightening of the jaw, the crossing of arms, the hurried justification of actions. Finally, attention-seeking behavior marks the presence of a dominant ego. Those who crave constant recognition, who must be acknowledged in every room, every meeting, every conversation, they are broadcasting the pulse of their self-image. They thrive on validation, and their reactions are predictable. Flattery feeds them, challenge threatens them, and every social interaction is a battleground of influence. Recognizing these signs is the first step in navigating human interactions strategically. Once you can identify arrogance, defensiveness, and attention-seeking, you begin to map the psychological terrain of the people around you. A terrain that, when understood, becomes both predictable and, in subtle ways, influenceable. Influence begins not with force, but with understanding. And one of the most subtle, yet devastatingly powerful tools in this invisible arsenal is praise. But not just any praise. Genuine acknowledgement, the kind that touches the core of a person's ego, can open doors that logic alone cannot. When someone is recognized, truly recognized, it feeds the ego in ways that are almost primal. Pride, self-esteem, and identity all light up in response to validation. A well-timed compliment, a sincere acknowledgement of effort or talent, can lower defenses, build trust, and create a connection that feels effortless, though it is carefully guided. Picture this: a tense office boardroom. The clock ticks, deadlines loom, and one colleague, stubborn, immovable, refuses to budge. Logic has failed, arguments only harden their stance. At first glance, it seems impossible, but in reality, what you're facing is not resistance to the task, but resistance born from ego. The key is not to push harder, but to redirect the ego. Instead of confronting, you acknowledge. Acknowledge their expertise, their value, their past contributions. Say, you've handled situations like this before with impressive results. How would you approach it here? Instantly, the battlefield shifts. The colleague no longer feels challenged. They feel validated. Their ego is fed, and in that moment of pride, cooperation becomes far more likely. Another example: a project requires input, but your colleague dismisses your suggestions outright. Instead of presenting your idea as yours, frame it as theirs. Plant the seed subtly. I remember you mentioning a similar idea before. Maybe we could expand on it? Now their ego claims ownership. They see the idea as an extension of themselves, and suddenly the resistance evaporates into agreement. In the workplace, stubbornness often masks a fragile ego protecting its territory. By giving genuine acknowledgement and allowing pride to work in your favor, you transform obstacles into allies. It is not manipulation in the crude sense. It is understanding the hidden mechanics of identity and using them to unlock cooperation where conflict once thrived. From the shadows of identity to the bright stage of behavior, we've uncovered the silent power that rules every human interaction: the ego. We began by understanding what ego truly is: the fragile lens of self-worth, pride, and personal identity. We saw how it drives decisions, distorts perception through biases, and thrives on comparison. We learned to recognize its signs: arrogance, defensiveness, insecurity, and the desperate hunger for validation. And finally, we discovered how influence, when wielded with precision, can flow through ego itself, whether by acknowledgement, subtle praise, or the careful shaping of choices. The truth is this: ego is not an enemy, nor is it a friend. It is a force, neutral, yet immensely powerful. Left unchecked, it can lead to conflict, stubbornness, and self-destruction. But when understood, it becomes a map, a key, a lever through which influence is possible. In the workplace, in relationships, in everyday life, the patterns are always there, waiting for those who know how to see them. So ask yourself, the next time someone reacts, resists, or reveals their pride, are you simply witnessing a moment, or are you watching the ego in motion, giving you a chance to guide it? This is the hidden power of ego, and now you hold it in your hands.